Hello everyone, I am Chase at Rocky Mountain ATVMC, and this is our dirt bike overview for the Kawasaki KLX110. All right, so we all know there's a lot of great smaller bikes that are out there that are great for youth riders, kids that are just learning to ride, but also really fun play bikes for adults. And today we've got one that I'm really excited for. This is the KLX110 from Kawasaki. It's a great beginner bike, okay, for kids that are maybe transitioning from a smaller bike, like say a PW80, but also the KLX110, very popular play and pit bike for older riders. And the reason we say that is because honestly, the frame and the chassis on these things are overbuilt, so they can withstand a lot more of the abuse that faster and older riders are gonna put these through. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go through, give you some background history on the bike. We'll talk about engine specs. We're also gonna talk about sizing. That's very important when choosing a smaller bike, is what size rider is gonna be ideal for this type of bike. And then we're gonna give you some tips and tricks. We're gonna talk about what you can do to make these better as far as performance goes, as well as comfort for your rider. And do not forget that this is a part of a series. We're taking a lot of these smaller bikes for youth riders and play bikes, and we're doing this series to help you guys know which bike might be best for you. So make sure to get subscribed to our channel, and that's gonna keep you up to date when we release the next videos. But let's get started with some background history. So they started making the KLX110 back in 2002, and they still make it today, so they've been around a very long time. The great part about that is there's a lot of them out there, and it's very easy to find parts. But in 2010, they went through a big update. They pretty much revamped the entire bike. So they updated the plastics, so the shrouds, the front fender, the airbox plastics. Basically, they just made it more sportier looking and faster looking. But also in 2010, they didn't just do the plastics and the body styling, they pretty much revamped the whole bike. So that's the year that they went to electric start. They also went from a 3 to a 4-speed transmission. And another big update that we saw is that in 2010, they started making the KLX110L. Now that's the big wheel version, but don't confuse that with tire and rim size. The 110L actually has the same size tires and rims. The difference is in the suspension. So the 110L has about an inch more of travel, and it's got stiffer settings in the shock as well as the forks, and that also makes the bike about 2 inches taller. So if you are gonna be picking one of these up as a play bike or a pit bike and you're an older rider, we definitely recommend trying to find a 110L, because the stiffer suspension as well as that taller seat height, it does make a big difference. But what's great about these bikes, like I said, they're still making them today, so it makes it easy to find parts, and they're very reliable. Now when we talk about price with these, so full retail for brand new, you're about $2,300. But what's nice is that they've been around for so long that there's a lot of these for sale online. So if you look hard enough, you can usually find one in really good condition for a really good price. Now let's talk about engine specs. So it's a 112cc air-cooled engine. It's a 4-speed auto clutch. So that's what makes it, again, a great transition bike from a fully auto bike, so it teaches them to shift. Now one important thing to note is that with the 110L, okay, that actually does come with a clutch lever, so that's a fully manual bike. So something just to consider if you're gonna be buying this for a younger rider. Now you're gonna have electric start with the backup kickstarter. You don't have a keyed ignition, but if you look over here on the left side, you're gonna have an on-off switch. This does have a light indicating if it's on or not, and then your starter switch is just underneath that. Fuel tank, 1 gallon capacity, so plenty of fuel. And then lastly, something we wanna mention is with the brakes. So you're gonna have drum brakes front and rear on this bike. So for beginner riders, they work great, but if you have a rider that's a little bit faster, more aggressive, or say an older rider, they're gonna be a little bit soft, so it's just something to remember. But now, let's talk about size-wise, who's gonna be a good fit for this bike. You know, it's probably one of the biggest questions people ask is, what size youth rider is gonna be a good fit for this bike? Now the 110, the seat height on this bike is 26.8 inches. Now remember, like we said earlier, the KLX110L, that's 2 inches taller, but if you compare it to some other bikes from other manufacturers, it's about a ½ inch taller than the CRF110 from Honda. And if you compare it to, say, the PW80, which is a bike that a lot of riders will transition from, it's almost 2 inches taller than the PW80. But what we're gonna do now is we're actually gonna bring in a youth rider. We're gonna give his size and also his age. We're gonna put him on the bike just to give you a good size reference of what age and what height is gonna be a good fit for this bike. All right, so now we're gonna give you a good reference as far as size, what's gonna be good for this bike. So I've actually got Owen here to help me out. Now Owen, come on over here and get on this for me. So Owen is 10 years old, he's 4 feet 7 inches tall, and this is actually his personal bike. So with Owen on there, you can see he's pretty much flat-footed. So we actually consider Owen at the larger end of the size range for this bike. But you gotta remember, this is a standard version. There is the L, which we mentioned, that is 2 inches taller. So the L would actually be a little bit better fit for Owen. But Owen right now is actually transitioning to a KX65 that he has, which is actually a little bit taller. So just remember, Owen at 4 feet 7 inches, he's at the larger end for the 110 standard. Now, if you're wondering kind of what's a good starting age range, we'd say about 7, 8 years old up till about 10 years old, which we have Owen. So if you're not quite sure, just use him as a good size reference. All right, so now what we want to do is go through and give you some tips and tricks on how to get the most out of these bikes when it comes to comfort as well as performance. So first thing we want to cover is with the carburetor. So the carburetor on this bike, just like with other smaller bikes, the jets are pretty small. So if you are going to let this bike sit for a longer period of time, what we recommend is either using a fuel stabilizer or just completely draining the carburetor and getting that fuel out of there. That way it's not going to gum up your jets. And now going along with that smaller carburetor, these things are pretty cold-blooded and they're jetted pretty lean. So in colder temperatures, they can be a little bit difficult to start or take a long time to warm up. So what we always like to do with these smaller bikes is just do our cold start jet kit from Tusk. That's just going to make it easier to start in the cold weather. It's just going to help it warm up and overall just run better. Now another thing to keep in mind is with the shift lever. So the stock shift lever on this bike, it is not folding. So if the little misses or junior has a tip over crash, they do bend pretty easily. So to remedy that, we've got the Tusk folding shift lever on here. They do have this in a couple colorways for this bike. You've got blue, you've also got green. Also, one thing to keep in mind with that, something that we've noticed is that it's pretty difficult to shift this bike. You know, it's pretty stiff. So for a younger rider that's just starting out, they might have a little bit of difficulty shifting at first, but it's something that they're going to get used to. Now down by the shift lever, another big upgrade that we recommend are the IMS Super Stock foot pegs. The stock foot pegs on this bike are pretty small. So for a rider that's just starting, if they're sitting a lot, not a big deal, but as they start to stand up and get more aggressive, definitely makes a big difference and more comfort by having those oversized foot pegs. Now working our way up, handlebars. So the stock handlebars on this bike, they're just made from steel. It's nice because they're inexpensive, but steel handlebars do bend pretty easily. So what we've actually done, we've got the Tusk T10 aluminum handlebars on here. Same rise, same height that we had stock. We do have other bars that do have more of a rise, so for taller riders, if you can use this as a play bike or a pit bike, you could get a taller handlebar if you wanted to. But we've got the T10 handlebars on there. Also, we just added some new grips on there. So if your grips are in pretty bad shape, we've just got the Tusk MX grips on here. So these are nice and soft. They last a really long time. Then you're just going to notice that we've got some parts and accessories on here just to give a cool look to the bike. You know, for younger riders, they absolutely love the little bling factor that you put on these. So we've got some cool accent pieces, gas cap you can see on there. Last couple things we did as far as looks and comfort, we've got a Neutron seat cover on here, so a lot grippier, a lot better looking than the stock seat cover. And then to top it all off, we've got a full custom graphics kit from Attack Graphics. So that's what we've done to the bike just to give more performance and also just better looks. You can also see we've got brand new Bridgestone tires on here. For younger riders, new tires makes a big difference. That's going to help them with confidence. New tires are just going to offer more grip, and that's why I say more confidence for younger riders. And also, if you're going to be using it for play bike or pit bike, you got to be hooking up those tires. Now let's talk about performance. Now when it comes to modification, we know there's a lot of riders out there that are wanting to get more performance out of these. So we've actually done some research, and there are some inexpensive mods that we see riders doing, and we'll cover those. So the first one is with exhaust. So if you're not going to get an aftermarket exhaust, what we see a lot of riders doing is they take the exhaust pipe off and then they actually drill out the header. So what we found is that a 9/16 or a 5/8 drill bit is best for that. That's actually going to get more airflow through the exhaust. Another popular one riders do is they'll actually remove the air box and they'll actually cut out the snorkel that is in there that's pretty constricting. And while they remove that snorkel, they'll also cut out a section of the air box to open up the air intake to get as much airflow as possible. Now keep in mind, if you're going to be doing those type of mods, you want to pay attention to your jetting as well, because the more airflow you get, that's going to affect your jetting. So just a couple things you want to keep in mind, that those do go hand in hand. Now, those are some mods that people do that are inexpensive, but the great part about these bikes, both for the 110 and the 110L, is that we actually sell aftermarket parts and accessories to get more performance out of these. We have oversized piston kits, gasket kits, clutch kits, and as I mentioned earlier, we have aftermarket exhaust for these as well. So if you want to get more performance, you've got a few options to go for. But there it is. That is our bike overview for the KLX110 from Kawasaki. Hopefully this has given you a good idea of what you can expect from this bike and also what size rider is going to be great for this. If you guys do have any more questions, leave your comments below and we can get those answered. To pick up any of the parts that we talked about for this bike today, click on the link or head over to RockyMountainATVMC.com. Remember that orders over $75 ship free. Get subscribed to our channel. That way you're not going to miss out on any of the other smaller bike overviews that we're going to be doing, because we've got a lot more coming down the pipe. I'm Chase at Rocky Mountain. See you on the trails.